Hi, thank you for clicking on this video, and today what I'm going to share with you is a full tutorial on how to create your own first Flutter Web project live on the World Wide Web.
Oh my god, I forgot to introduce myself. Well, 3 facts about me. My name is Haris. I have been working with Flutter for 2 years and I have taught hundreds of students in programming.
So in this course, for those beginners out there, I will go through on how to download Flutter inside your Mac OS machine or your Windows OS machine. And I'm going to go through on how to build a Linktree clone with Flutter and deploy it as a Flutter Web project or a website. If you don't know what a Linktree clone is, it is basically a very simple landing page for users to be able to click to your different social media links or links that you want to showcase. At the end of this tutorial, you'll be able to get started with Flutter Web and be able to host your first Flutter Web project live on the World Wide Web.
So this is the content page of the whole tutorial. The first part is how to install Flutter in your macOS machine. The second part is how to install it in your Windows machine. Third is you're going to build your first Flutter Web app. And the fourth one, you're going to build the Linktree clone user interface or UI. And lastly, you'll go push it through Firebase hosting into the World Wide Web, and you have some introduction on progressive web apps. The timings are inside the description.
So let's get started.
Alright, the first step for you to create a website using Flutter Web is to download Flutter. And let's get started downloading Flutter. So in this part of the video, we are going to download Flutter in the Mac OS machine. If you have a Windows machine, skip this part to see how to download Flutter in your Windows machine. So let's carry on with the Mac OS installation. Okay, inside the system requirements, make sure it is running Mac OS and you have a disk space of 2.8 gigabytes and you have the necessary tools. We are going to use mainly terminal and Git. Alright, in order for you to get the Flutter SDK, there's 2 ways to do it. First is to download a zip folder. The second way is to use Git. We can clone it from the website itself. And in this tutorial, I'm going to share with you on how to download through Git. So what is Git? Git is like something like a Google Drive for your coding projects. And let's open up terminal. So your terminal looks something like this. One thing to take note is that there is different types of terminal. If you were to use Mac OS Catalina, I'm currently using ZSH, which means Z shell. If you were to use Bash, you can still use Bash, but I will recommend to use Z shell for this tutorial. Before we do any Git clone, let's create this development folder. And currently you are inside your users folder. So how do we know that is if we type pwd, you could see that you are currently inside your users folder. And this is the name that I have. Your name will be different according to what you named your Mac OS machine. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a development folder. So how are we going to create it is using this command called mkdir. So mk means make, dir means directory. Directory is just another name for folder. We are going to create a development folder. Press enter. And then this will create our development folder. How can we find out if our development folder has been created inside our users folder? So let's type in ls, which means list. So it lists down all the folders that we have. Now, why did I create the development folder with the uppercase D? Is because the different folders are also named as that format. And this is a good way for you to see your folders. And you can see that our development folder has been created for us. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to change the directory into our development folder. So change directory or change where we are currently right now into our development folder. If you want to have an autocomplete, press tab, press enter, And then if you want to see where you are currently right now, is to type pwd, and you could see that we are now inside our development folder. This development folder is where we are going to download our Flutter project. The next thing is to copy the git clone command and then paste it over here. And now this will clone the Flutter project from this website. At the same time, what I'm going to explain is this -b stable. So we are going to download a stable version of Flutter SDK, and -b means branch for short. If you don't know what branch stable means, that means, in other words, a version of Flutter that is stable. Alright, so we have downloaded our stable version of Flutter. The next thing that we need to do is you need to add the Flutter tool to your path. However, this sets the path variable command temporarily. So to permanently add Flutter to your path, we need to update our path. So in summary, what we need to do is we need to create a resource file for your shell. For mine, I have a macOS Catalina, so I'm using Z shell. But for earlier versions of macOS like Mojave, you can use the bash shell resource file, or you have a .bash_profile resource file. So if this is the first time, we are going to create the ZSHRC file. But first I'm going to download Visual Studio Code in order for me to create the Z shell resource file. So I have my Visual Studio Code inside my downloads folder. So just press open. So it opens up our folder over here. The next thing that you need to do is to install the code command in path. It requires our admission permission or privilege in order for us to override the path. So we will type in our password. Okay. So the next thing is that we need to create a Z shell resource file. However, we are having a messy terminal, so you can type in Command K and this will clear our terminal history. Next thing is that we will type in code and then we'll type in this ZSHRC and let's press enter. And you could see this ZSHRC file being created. So where is this ZSHRC file being created at? As you guessed it, is inside your users folder, which is Haris Samingan or your username. So the next thing is to add this line and change the path to Flutter Git directory to the path where you have cloned the Flutter's Git repo. So let's copy this and paste it over here. So make sure you don't have an extra space before the export name. And then at the same time, let's change the path to Flutter Git directory to the location that we have downloaded our Flutter SDK. So we type in development. At the same time, let's have a comment, which is a hash, Flutter SDK path. This hash means that this line of code will not be read if we were to save this. Okay, so the next thing is that we need to run this command to refresh the current window, or you want to open new terminal window to automatically source the file. So source is just another word for refresh. So let's copy this whole thing and paste it over here. So let's remove the RC file and let's put ZSHRC, press enter. Okay, next is we need to verify the Flutter bin directory is now in our path. So let's copy this command, echo path. This will just show us if the Flutter is inside our path, which is correct. Lastly, we need to verify that the Flutter command is available by running which Flutter. So type in which Flutter, press enter, Flutter not found. Why is that so? It's because we are currently inside the development folder, which is where our Flutter folder is. So let's get out from there, type in cd, and then let's have the command which Flutter, press enter. And now you could see that we have our Flutter path installed inside our machine. Now we're going to do the platform setup. But we're not going to download the iOS and Android emulator. We are going to set up our web platform. So if you click this building a web app, the requirements is to install the Flutter SDK that we have done. And now we are going to install Chrome. If you don't have Chrome, you can just click on the link and this will bring you to this website. Just download Chrome. Alright, so the next thing that we want to do is to create a new project with web support. So the next setup is to have the Flutter channel beta command. So what does channel beta means? So that means we are going to use the beta version of the Flutter SDK. So let's copy this whole thing and let's clear this and paste it over here. And now we are going to wait for it to finish downloading the .sdk from the Flutter engine. Now we have switched our Flutter channel into the beta branch. If you want to check which Flutter channel we are currently in, let's type in Flutter channel, and now we still have to download the .sdk. Okay. Alright, so once it has downloaded, you could see these words or statement Flutter channels, and that's a list of channels that it has printed out for us. And currently we are in our beta from the start that it has printed out. So you have different channels like master, development, and stable. So development is the most updated. Beta is where is the channel that has web support first of all, and second of all, this is where it is less buggy but still moving at a fast pace. And lastly, I have master and stable. Stable is where there's not a lot of changes. This is where there's not a lot of bugs. I think it's the same goes to master. Alright, the next thing is that let's check our Flutter upgrade. So let's clear this whole terminal and let's paste Flutter upgrade. Alright, you can see that it's already up to date, and you can see the version of Flutter that we have and the channel and the other versions of the different tools that we are using. Lastly, we need to enable our web through this command. So let's copy and let's paste. And you can see that the setting enable web now becomes true. So let's enable Flutter in our editor. Alright, the next thing that you need to do is to type in Command-Shift-P, and this will open up the shortcut menu, and you need to type in Flutter. So Flutter, and then click on New Project. So you could see there's an error that you could not find the Flutter SDK. So let's click on the Locate SDK, and then this will open the Windows Explorer, the File Explorer. Click on your username, and then click on the development folder that we've created earlier. Then click on Flutter folder, and it will still show an error. You have to restart your Visual Studio Code, and once you open it, try to open the Flutter new project, and now it is working. So the next thing that we need to do is we're going to name our project. So let's have this project called link3_clone. Press enter. This file explorer will open up. For me, I want to download inside the desktop folder. So let's select it. And Flutter create is now being run. So let's wait patiently. Okay, there might be some errors, but you have to wait patiently for it to analyze the whole project folder. And we are done. How do we know that the web is enabled inside this Flutter project? Is to go to the Explorer tab over here, and you could see this web folder. Alright, and the next thing is that this main.dot file has a default project, which is basically a counter app. And at the same time, if we want to run this app, we need a device. So the device that we want to run our Flutter Web project is using Chrome. So let's start running our first Flutter Web project by clicking on Run, and then you could see the Start Debugging. Press it. And now you could see Chrome open up with our first Flutter Web project. And this is the default counter app that Flutter has created for us. So if you were to click this button, then the number changes according to how much times I have pushed the button.
For the Windows installation, I don't have a Windows machine, but I have recorded in a Windows machine in my YouTube channel. So I'm going to showcase my YouTube videos on how to install Flutter Visual Studio Code and how to set up Flutter Web in your Windows operating system or your machine. Apologies for the low quality video, so let's get on installing Flutter. Hi, I'm going to share with you on how to download Flutter in your Windows machine. At the same time, I'm going to introduce you to PowerShell, terminal commands, and Git.
If you don't know all of these three things, then this tutorial is for you. So first of all, we are going to meet the system requirements before we download Flutter. First, we need an operating system of Windows 7 and above. If you have Windows XP, Windows 2000, Windows 95, I suggest you to get a better Windows laptop or desktop. Next, we need a disk space of 400 megabytes. If you don't have 400 megabytes, I think you need to delete some files or your pawn. And lastly, we need some tools, Windows PowerShell 5.0 and Git for Windows 2.x. We need to get PowerShell. If you don't have this search bar, right click on your taskbar, hover on search and you see show search bar. Click on it and you see this. Type PowerShell and PowerShell is basically this terminal. We need to find the version number of your current Windows PowerShell. Have this command, host.version, press enter and this thing will pop up. Make sure there is the number 5 under the major word, and if you have that, good for you. If you don't have Windows PowerShell or your Windows PowerShell is not 5.0 or newer, click on this link to find out more. Secondly, we need Git for Windows. So let me introduce you what Git is. You can check this video out, right? This video on what Git is. It's a very good explanation. And back to the video. To download Git, you need to go to this website, git-sem.com, and let's download Git. Once you download Git, open up the exe file and you see this. I'm going to share with you the step-by-step process in the installation of Git. Just press next, make sure it's inside programs file and it's named Git. Next, try not to mess with it, just press next, next. Okay, this is very important. Instead of using Vim, you have to set it to Visual Studio Code. Let's press next, press next, press next, press next, press next, press next, and you can install. Once you are done, you will see this Windows. Just uncheck the box in View Release Notes, press finish. Now let's check whether Git is downloaded in our terminal. If you type Git, then you see this whole thing appear. That means Git is installed in our machine. The next step is to get the Flutter SDK. Normally, we can download the zip file and then we can manually open up the zip file, drag the folder inside our SRC C drive folder. But we are not going to do that. We are going to do the programmer way. So what I mean by that is you are going to use PowerShell and Git in order for us to download the Flutter SDK. You might be wondering, what's a SDK? So SDK is a software development kit, basically like your Git exe file where you can install and also change the settings of it. But Flutter is a programming framework. It doesn't have that windows to tell you where to download it or the different settings. You have to do all in the terminal. When I mean terminal, I mean the PowerShell terminal. And that's where Git come in. Not only does Git control the version, it also helps us to download files through a URL link. Interesting, right? Before that, I'm going to teach you on how to create a folder inside your C drive as a programmer. A brief introduction is that your computer is actually a folder and many stuff, but it mainly comprises of a folder and it's called the C drive. Some of you have D drive, but mainly your Windows operating system is inside your C drive. If you were to go back to PowerShell, you'll see this C users admin. This is basically where you currently are at in the computer. So you see here, C users admin, this is where you are currently. So above the admin, you have the users folder, and above the users folder, you have the C drive folder. And that's why it looks like this. This is where your location is right now. Thing is, we need to create another folder called SRC in the C drive folder. So here we are in admin and now we need to go to the users. So how do we do that is we use this command called cd, which is not compact disk but change directory. In other words, moving location 2. So we can use the command cd to change our location to users. How do we do that? Is we use this command called cd ... That means it's change directory one level up. So one level up means from here to over here. Alright, let's do it in our PowerShell. And now you could see here it says users. Now you are currently in the users folder. Now you try change the directory location to the C drive. The results should be like this. Try it out. Alright, the answer is cd ... and it will show you this. And now you are currently inside the C drive. Another thing that I can share with you is how do you know where you are instead of looking at this. What you could do is you can type in pwd. This means print working directory or show me where I am right now. And it will say C ... and /. That means you are in the C drive. So Flutter gives a suggestion on creating a src folder inside our C drive. How do we do that? We will use this command called mkdir, make directory, or in other words, make a folder. Instead of you right clicking to create a folder, we can use the terminal command to create a folder. So now we just make a folder in src. mkdir means make directory of the name src. src is just a short form for source. It is just a folder name. So let's do that. Let's create the src folder in our C drive. Okay, this shows that we have successfully created the src folder. So how do we check all the folders inside our current location? So there's this command called ls. That means list all folders and files. And you could see here, these are all your folder names that is inside the C drive. And our src folder is also inside. Pretty cool, eh? Pretty cool. Now, in order for us to enter inside a src folder, what we need to do is we need to change directory into our src folder. There you have it. You could see this src folder. An example is you could see Windows C, and let's enter src. This whole line represents this Windows src. Now we are going to clone our Flutter SDK inside our src folder. So you just copy the code and paste it. This means that it's cloning the repository or folder from this website into our src folder. Creates the Flutter folder for us. Once it is finished downloading, it will look something like this. 100% done. You must be wondering what this git clone is. Git in the terminal is a path to many commands. So git has git clone, git commit, git push, and git add, and there's many more commands that is available in the path of git. So we need to create a path for Flutter to run this command called Flutter Doctor. So let's check whether our Flutter path is added in our environment variables. So let's type in environment variables. You see this thing pop up, click on it. To see this variable called path, you double click on it to see whether C:src Flutter bin is added. Alright, if it's not added, click on browse this PC, Windows C, src Flutter, and you see the word bin. Click on bin, press OK. You can see here there's added. That's how you add a path into your Windows machine. Press OK, press OK, press OK. Now you need to restart your terminal. Type in the word Flutter Doctor. Now it's downloading another file called Dart. Dart is the programming language. Let me share with you what's the difference between a framework and a programming language. Imagine programming language is cement, and the framework is what you do with it. So the cement, you can create roads, you can create houses, you can create sculptures, you can create many more things. So that is basically a framework. And the programming language is Dart, which is the cement that you can build stuff. So other than building mobile apps, you can use Dart to create server-side code or many more stuff. If it's stuck, then you can just press enter and it will start downloading. That's a bit of a bug that you might face when you're downloading the Flutter tool. Once you're done, you will see that Flutter has been installed, and then these are the things that you have not installed yet. So it's pretty cool that they will tell you how to install like your Android and your VS Code and whatnot. Yep, and that's about it. That's how you download Flutter.
We are going to go through on how to get started with Flutter Web. So I'm going to introduce you to IDE and Visual Studio Code and your first Flutter Web project. If you don't know any of this, then this tutorial is for you. That's why it's called a Newbie Programmer Guide. Meaning if you have no or very little experience in programming, then this tutorial is for you. First of all, what is an IDE? IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. That means it is a document software to write code, but cooler. Meaning that it is like your Google Docs for writing documents. IDE is your Google Docs to write code. And IDE has typically 3 main functions and more, but these I think are the 3 main functions for beginner developer would appreciate. So first, you are going to write code. Second, you're going to create apps, awesome stuff. And lastly, IDEs are meant for you to debug. So in creating code or apps or web apps or whatever, you're going to use an IDE to debug on errors that you'll find when you create a project. And out there's tons of IDEs. So you have all of these awesome looking icons, but we are going to focus on one, which is Visual Studio Code. Why Visual Studio Code? Because it's something that I'm very familiar about. Visual Studio Code is an IDE that's created by, guess who created Visual Studio Code, or which big company created Visual Studio Code? If you look at it, it looks like Microsoft, and you're correct. Microsoft created Visual Studio Code, and it's one of the best IDEs I've ever coded in so far. And yeah, it has debugging built in Git. Wow. So if you were from the previous video, you know Git, you have to use the terminal, but then Visual Studio Code actually have its own inbuilt Git stuff, and you also have some extensions. So let's go download Visual Studio Code. Just download according to your operating system. I am going to go through on how to download Visual Studio Code. So let's accept the agreement and make sure you read everything. You make sure you read everything, right? So we're just going to skip. And you don't really have to mess around. But there's one thing that I want you to focus on, which I'm going to explain later, which is add to path. In the previous video, I talked about path, and actually Visual Studio Code can be opened by a path, which I'm going to tell you in a later time. So press next, and then we're just going to install it. This is a little dance when I wait for something to download. Alright, once you're done with downloading Visual Studio Code, click Finish, and you will see Visual Studio Code open up. Alright, and this is just an IDE, and it looks like a very cool interface, like, oh my god, why is there so many things? So in Visual Studio Code, you have a lot of things where you have the File Explorer, the Search tab, the Git or Source Control tab, the debugger, and at the same time, the extension. I need you guys to download the extension right here. Search for the Flutter extension, and then you download it. This will give you shortcuts for you to make your Flutter development so much faster, and at the same time you also can explore and download certain things. So for me, I will download the material theme and the material icon theme. Earlier I talked about the path and Visual Studio Code. Actually, you can open Visual Studio Code programmatically using PowerShell or your terminal. Open PowerShell and type in the word code, and you press enter. It actually opens Visual Studio Code. Wow, that's amazing! And the thing is, you can actually open a folder. using Visual Studio Code. So I'm opening Linktree clone, which is in the link on top, and you could see it opens the folder for me with the Visual Studio Code IDE. That's pretty amazing. Another thing to take note is that you actually have terminal inside IDE of Visual Studio Code. If you look up here, there's this word terminal. Press new terminal, and this is your Windows PowerShell. Isn't that amazing? So you can do your terminal stuff without opening Windows PowerShell. Without opening Windows. Oh my god, it's so hard to point. Without opening Windows PowerShell. That's amazing! Now, to create a new project with web support, what you need to do is to run these commands inside your PowerShell or inside Visual Studio Code. Let me go through what this different command means. Flutter channel beta. Flutter Web has many branches: master, dev, beta, stable, and many more actually. And Flutter Web actually exists in beta. That's why we have to change our channel or master to beta. Next, Flutter upgrade. Simply meaning that we are just going to upgrade the version of Flutter if we were to have an old version of Flutter. And lastly, Flutter config enable web. This means we are telling Flutter to enable web support, which we will be able to create awesome Flutter web applications in our development. When you run Flutter channel beta, it will look something like this. Don't worry, it's not an error, it is just downloading. While we are waiting, let me sing you a song. No problems, guys, collect alone. Once you have done switching your branch to beta, then you have to do Flutter upgrade. So let's do that. Now we are still gonna wait. Ooh, oh my god. Once you're done with Flutter upgrade, it will look something like this. Welcome to Flutter. Oh, I feel so welcome. Oh, and after that, you could see that it's already updated, and you can see the version. So it does a bit of like Flutter Doctor in the background to see whether you are doing okay. Alright, so next up, we are going to enable Flutter web support, which is this command, Flutter config enable web. Alright, let's run it. Now I have set the enable web to true, and you have to restart any open editors for them to read new settings, including PowerShell and Visual Studio Code. So you just close it and reopen it. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Oh, and we're done. Now we are going to get started with Flutter Web. We are going to create our own Flutter Web project. Usually, if you don't have an IDE, you'll have to run Flutter create my app inside your PowerShell terminal, and then we'll create a Flutter project or folder inside your desktop or wherever you want it to be. And then you have to change directory inside your app folder. And if you want to run the web app, you have to use this Flutter run -d Chrome. This means you are running your project in Chrome. So Flutter run means you're running the project, -d means which device, and you chose Chrome as your device. However, the IDE actually handles everything here. That's amazing. You don't have to use PowerShell. You just have to use Visual Studio Code. Just by Ctrl+Shift+P, and this will open a window that has its own commands, but readable for us to understand. One command is Flutter new project, and it will ask you what project you want to do. So I'm going to say Linktree _ clone. Press enter. They will ask you where do you want your Flutter app to be created. I will normally choose desktop for me to create any Flutter projects because I could see the physical file inside my desktop. Select that desktop as your folder and let's create. And this will magically create your Linktree clone Flutter project using Visual Studio Code. So you have to wait for a while. Once you have created your Flutter project, it might look something like this. Don't worry if you have a lot of problems or you have a lot of red stuff coming out, it's just Visual Studio Code trying to analyze the different files at once to see whether there's any errors. And in the end, there is no errors. In order for us to run our Flutter Web project, you have to go to Debug and click Start Debugging. Make sure that Chrome Web JavaScript is being selected. It may take a while for it to load, but don't worry. Oh, it's starting to open. Oh my god. Once it finished loading, it will look something like this. Your first Flutter project will look like a counter app.
In this tutorial, you are going to create this links landing page. It looks a bit like a link tree, and it is. So let's get started. Okay, so inside your Linktree clone project, you have all of this code. I'm going to start explaining on the main function over here. So in every Flutter or Dart project, it always starts with a main function. Take it as a starting point to run your app. And we should look at that. There is a run app function where it inflates the given widget and it attaches to the screen, whether it's a phone, tablet, or website. So what's a widget? Think of it as user interface or UI components. So in a screen, for example, this links landing page or Linktree clone, there are different widgets that we are using. An image, text, and buttons over here. And there are two types of widgets. Stateless widget and stateful widget. Stateful means it's able to hold a state and can be manipulated and change the UI according to any events. For example, in our counter app, by pressing this increment button, you are changing the state from the number 0 to 1 and to 2. We are holding the state of the number so that it can increase. However, in this tutorial, we are going to use stateless widgets. And what are stateless widgets? They don't have state. It is like a static website where the UI does not change at all. So in our Linktree clone over here, we can delete my home page and the rest of the code, and you can remove this line of code over here. At the same time, you can remove these comments over here and this comment over here. Now this my app widget is a stateless widget. So once you create a stateless widget, you would see this build method. Well, the build method is basically builds the widget that you return, like the material app. So it describes the part of the user interface represented by the widget. That means this widget just represents all of the different widgets that you are returning. Now, inside our build method, it is returning a material app. So what's a material app? It creates a material app. So a material app has different functionality, and you can think of it as like a package or scaffold. So this widget has routes, themes, title, and our home page. So what does material means? Material is a design system that is built by Google, and it has all the design guidance and code for you to develop different material design kind of widgets. For example, buttons and maybe a switcher. And also material design have its own icons. As Flutter is being created by Google, you can start creating the material app as your root widget or the starting widget. The next thing that we can do is we can change our title to our name. So my name is Happy Haris, and the next thing you could see that is a theme. So theme requires a theme data, and you could see the primary swatch colors blue. So primary swatch is basically the custom color that it has. So what I mean by that is that if you were to use the blue color, then it will use different parts of the blue to paint the different widgets that you create. For example, a button or the app bar. Alright, next we have this home parameter that requires us a widget. So with this widget, we can either pass in a stateful widget or stateless widget. However, we are going to create a stateless widget. So let's do that. Let's type in STL, and this will give a shortcut for us to create a stateless widget. Press tab, and now it returns us this whole block of code. So now it requires us to name our stateless widget. So let's put in links landing page. Copy this whole thing, paste it over here with the brackets. So you could see that if you create a stateless widget, it will return us a container. For those people with web development experience, a container is basically like a div. Let's create a text inside our container. Let's put in the word child, and we are going to create a text widget. And then let's add in our string, call it hello world. And let's save this. Let's run debugging for this project. You can press F5 or you can custom key your debugging. Alright, congratulations, you have created your first Hello World Flutter Web app. However, our Hello World, it looks a bit weird. It has this red color and then it has these yellow lines. I think there is something wrong. Yes, there is. Even though inside our debug console, this is where the different outputs or errors will be shown. It does not show anything. So actually, this is a UI error. That means that it doesn't have a theme. So this text doesn't have a theme data passed in. So the only way to fix this is to put in a material widget or input a theme. But what we are going to do is we're going to just change the container into this widget called material. Let's save this. And now our hello world has changed from something big to something very small. So what is this material widget? So it is like a container, but you can have the different elevation, shadow color, and many more properties that you can change. And it basically passes in the theme inside our text widget. If you don't understand, it's okay. Think of it as this material feeding the text widget some theme so it doesn't shout any UI error. So the layout widgets inside Flutter comprises of columns and rows. So columns allows you to lay out your widget in a vertical manner, while the row allows you to lay out your widgets in a horizontal manner. So inside our app, we have two layouts that we are using. The column, which is our image, text, and our buttons. And then a row where we have this image over here, the hummingbird image, and the text. Alright, so the next thing that we need to do is to wrap or insert our column widget under our material widget. So don't type it yet. I'm going to show you how you're going to do it. Is you type in column and then make sure you have the brackets and then type in children, and children requires us a list of widgets. Why? Because inside a column, it can contain many widgets that stack on top of one another. And then this is one way you can do it. However, there's another way that you can do this using a shortcut key or shortcut keys. For Mac users, you can press Command dot. For Windows user, you can try using Control dot. And this opens up a shortcut window. And you could see that there is this thing called wrap with column. So you click on it, and this will help us wrap our text widget inside the column widget. And with that, let's rename our Hello World to our social media handle. So let's type in the happy Harris, and let's save this. Now you could see that our text widget jumped from left to the middle. This is because column allows us to have the alignment for the different widgets to be in the center. And that's good because we want our widgets aligned in the center of the column. The next widget that we need to create is an image widget. So there is multiple image widgets that you can use, but I'm going to use this thing called Fade in Image Memory Network, which is the fourth one. Click on it and you could see an error that says expected to find comma. If you want to download this extension, it is called Error Lens. This allows you to have your error messages just beside the line of code that is giving out the error. So we need to put a comma, and it requires us to put a comma over here. Alright, inside the fit-in image memory network, it requires us to have two things. First, the image that we are loading, and the second is the placeholder that is stored in memory while our final image loads successfully from the internet. So let's add in our image. So this image only needs a string. So make sure that your image has a link to it. So I have my own link, which is over here. And then you need a placeholder. So this placeholder is not any ordinary placeholder image widget. It uses uint8list. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's a package for it, which is called transparent image. So how are we going to download any package in Flutter? So there is this file called pubspec YAML file. So type it in. And this is where you download your different dependencies. Now we're going to download this dependency called transparent image with the version number. Type in transparent image with this version number and make sure that it is one tab space, or you could say the same line as this Flutter word. Now if you save this, it will load your package. So you just wait until it finishes loading. Okay, now we need to put in the transparent image by typing this word, okay, transparent image. You can either manually import by typing the import statement, for example like this, and then type in transparent image dot dot, or you can do the shortcut way where you press in command or control dot and you can press import library. At the same time, it is best practice to put a trailing comma so that it can look nicer. Something like this. If you don't put the comma, it will look a little bit ugly, but let's put it over here. Okay, so if you have the image, great, but there will be an error message. So if you have an error, that means that your transparent image is not compiled correctly, because in Flutter Web, you are unable to import the library immediately. So what you need to do is to stop debugging and then restart your IDE. I got it to work because I have restarted my IDE. So if you have not, just restart your IDE and it will work. Okay, once you have your image like this, also another thing is that, so my image has been edited with a circle. So if your image is not exactly circle, it's fine. That means you need to edit your image and maybe put it into a circle. Next thing is to set our height and width. So let's put our height as 96 and let's put our width as 96 also. If you save this, and now it looks so much better. So currently in our design, we have some spacing on top, and then there are also some spacing in between the image and the text over here. So what we need is this widget that I usually use called sized box. Make sure you have the comma at the end. And this size box is a widget that just gives us a fixed size box with a width and height. And then you might want to put in a widget inside this sized box. Think of it as a container without any colors or personality. So let's add in a height of maybe 35. One thing to take note is that if you want to put a trailing comma, that's okay. But if you do that, then it takes up a lot more space. So what I usually do for sized box is that I will not have a trailing comma. So it will look nicer. Yes, now you have a space between the top and the image. Now we need some space in between the image and the text. So what you can do is you can add a sized box, but in our design we have spacing on top and below our text. So what you can do is to wrap this text in a padding. So you can use the shortcut and wrap with padding, and then it automatically generates some padding for us. You can use all and save this, or for all, that means it fills up all of our different edges with a padding. If you can't visualize, you can open up the Visual Studio Code shortcut menu by pressing Command Shift P or Control Shift P, and then you can type in debug painting. So inside debug painting, it paints us all the different padding and outline of the different widgets. So you can see the image is actually a square. It's just that my image has been cut into a circle, and then you could see that our text over here is surrounded with padding. However, for me, I just want the padding for my top and bottom. So you could use this thing called symmetric. So symmetric is basically another form of padding where it only fills in vertically and horizontally. So I'm just going to fill in the vertical space. And let's make the vertical spaces to be a little bit bigger. Let's save this, and now it looks so much better. So you can toggle the debug painting. You can toggle on and off the debug painting by going to the shortcut menu. Alright, the next thing is you want to add the buttons. And you can see the buttons only use a certain amount of space, like maybe 95% of the space. So first, we need to create, you guessed it, a button widget. So just below our padding over here, you could see that Flutter helps us print this word padding, so we know where exactly we want to create the widget. So there is this widget called flat button. If you press tab on this flat button with the brackets, it will fill us the necessary parameters, for example the onPress and child. If not, you can type in the actual word flat button, and then it will shout the error parameter child is required. So I prefer to use this method where I'm able to fill in the necessary parameters. So we have onPress null and a child null. So that means we need to insert something inside our flat button. So this is where you can put in your different social media links like your YouTube channel. So I'm going to use my YouTube channel. So I'm going to put in the text widget with the word YouTube, and this onPress, let's change this into an empty function. So this represents a empty function that you can pass in inside this flat button. If you save this, you could see that this YouTube button has been created. If you hover it, you could see that it only takes in the spaces that is around the text. At the same time, you can't actually see the box of the flat button. So what you can do is you can color it. So we're going to color it, and let's put in colors.green accent. And there you have it. You can now see the button. However, with this, it doesn't look nice. Inside our design, our button text color is white. So we can actually style our text widget. So inside our text, let's put comma, and you have this word called style. And let's add in this text style object. And inside your text style object, you have this color property that you can set. And let's put in colors.white. Save this. And now it looks close to what we want. Now, the thing is, we want the button to occupy 95% of the width. So how are we going to do that? Well, for this, we need a parent widget. So what is a parent widget? For example, this text widget, its parent widget is the flat button. So what is the flat button's child widget? The text. So currently, the flat button doesn't have a parent widget to take reference on the width or size. So what we can do is we can wrap this flat button with a sized box. So you could see here, wrap with widget, press it, and then let's create our sized box. And this size box, we are going to use the width parameters, and maybe for now, let's put in 200. You can see now it is 200. However, if I want to expand this widget, I want this button to also expand with it. How are we going to do that? If you have some web development experience, there is this thing called MediaQuery. So inside Flutter, there is also this object called MediaQuery. So we are going to get the width of the current size of the web browser. How are we going to do that? Is to type in MediaQuery.offContext.size.width. Now if you save this, you could see that our button now expands to the whole width of the web app. And if you expand the website, it is taking the width of the size no matter how big it is, and it's dynamic. And like I said earlier, it only takes 95%, so it's 0.95. So if you save this, 95% of space has been created. You could see that it is taking 95% of the width. Now the button looks a bit skinny. Let's add some padding. So where can you add the padding? So actually flat button has this padding parameter. So let's add it in. Padding. Let's add in edge insert symmetric with the vertical of 20 spaces. And now it looks very similar to what we want over here. However, we need some sized box to have a little bit more space. So let's add in a sized box of height 20 and comma. Let's save this. Alright, it looks very similar to what we are designing over here. So now we have the button, but if we want to click it, it will then redirect us to, for example, our YouTube channel. So how are we going to do that? Well, there is this package called URL Launcher. Go to pubspec.yaml and insert the URL Launcher package. So where can you find the versions of the package? So you can go to the website pubdev, and this is where you can find all the different Flutter packages that has been created by people, so you are able to use it. And you can go to the installing tab, and this is where you can just copy and paste. There are extensions that you can install to do this for you. So let's save this. In order for us to launch our link, what you can do is, so you can change these curly brackets to an arrow function. This is just another syntax for you to create a simple one-line code function. Then type in the word launch, and then let's import this. So launch requires us a URL string. So just put in your URL link. I have mine over here, and let's save this. And if you have paid attention, this doesn't work because there is this resolve package error. That means that our URL launcher is not compiled correctly. Any packages that you are developing for Flutter Web, you need to restart your IDE or your debugging process. So let's stop it and let's start again. Alright, so once you have your web app launched, if you click on YouTube, now it launches your YouTube channel or your Flutterlink UI3. Okay, so now what if we want to have more than one social media link? Well, as part of refactoring, Flutter allows us to have this shortcut called extract widget. What does this mean? This allows us to make this whole widget over here into one stateless widget. So let's extract our widget, and now it requires us a name for the widget. So let's type in link button, press enter, and you could see that the link button widget has been created for us. So you can create multiple link button. However, if you want to have another link button that is not YouTube, but maybe let's say Facebook, how are we going to do it? So we can set the parameters for this link button. Let's create the parameter using the word final, and then let's put in the type string, and let's put in the parameter name called title. So this will be placed inside here, and at the same time copy and paste just below the copied statement, and then type in, let's name it URL. So all final variables must be initialized. So what you can do is to command dot, and you have this shortcut that says add final field formal parameters. And now this is what we have over here. Now let's swap our title to the word YouTube, and let's swap our URL inside our launch function. Now, even without the title and URL, it will still work. Let's see what happens. Now you could see that there is a now string that is inserted inside a link button that shouts an error message. So what we can do is we need to add in our title and URL. However, if we don't put any warning messages, other developers will not be able to know whether any parameters is required. So what you need to do is to put in this syntax at required and make it the same for the URL. So now there is this warning message that says the parameter title is required. So let's put in the word title, and it is a string. Let's put in YouTube, and then you need a URL. Okay, let's put in the URL, and let's paste this over here, and let's save this. And now if we click on this, it redirects us to the YouTube page. Now we have created one instance of a link button. We can create multiple. So you can just copy and paste. So I have my LinkedIn, my podcast, and my Medium link. If we save this, you could see that all of our button has been created for us. However, it looks like one blob. We need some padding to separate the different buttons. So let's go back to our link button widget and let's add some padding inside our sized box. So wrap with padding, and let's use symmetric. So there, let's use this word called only, and only allows us to put in some padding specifically to which direction, whether it's left, top, right, or bottom. So let's put in bottom, and let's put in 16. Let's save this, and now it looks so much better. So once we have created the buttons, now we are left with the footer. So the footer is this row of text and image. So let's create the row with this, and let's type in children. Let's add in the text, made in Flutter. Let's add in the fade in image network. So the placeholder is K transparent image, and the image is a string. I'll put this link in the description, so don't worry. And let's put a trailing comma. So let's save this. Now you could see that our image is very, very big, and you have this made in Flutter. So let's size our image. Let's put in the height as 25 and the width as 25. Let's save this. Okay, so we want to center this row. How are we going to do that? So if we go to debug painting, you could see that the row is actually taking up all of the space over here and is pushing our widgets to the left, or we call in Flutter the start. So what we can do is that we can make this main axis to be a minimum size, meaning that it will take as little space as possible. So let's use the main axis size, and then let's put in main axis size minimum. Let's save this, and now you can see now it is in the middle. So let's have some space in between our text and our image. Let's add in a size box of a width of 7. Alright, so it looks much better. However, we want our footer at the bottom of the widget. So how are we going to do that? There is this widget that's called Spacer. So what Spacer does is, imagine it is a widget that takes as much space as possible. So we save this, and now that our made in Flutter is at the bottom of our widget. However, it is right at the bottom. But let me show you what Spacer does is, it is a flexible that allows us to take as much space as it can. So I think that's pretty great. So let's add in some sized box at the bottom. So let's put in just below our row. We can see our word row over here. Put a comma, and let's put in the size box of like 23. Let's save this. And maybe for the text, let's put the style with a font size of 15. Alright, so it looks more pronounced. Now if we were to move up and down, our footer just remains at the bottom. So that's great. So if you think that if you expand this whole website and this is ugly, so what you can do is to make this into a fixed size. So if you were to go to MediaQuery over here, so let's put in this MediaQuery as a variable. So let's type in final small width, which is equal to MediaQuery.offContext.size.width. Let's put a semicolon. So let's put in small width. Let's now create this thing called width, which is basically this whole thing. We are getting the width of the app, and let's make this as the width itself. Now, I would say that once it grows to a certain size, it will stop expanding. So let's put as if the width and put this syntax called ternary. So let me type in the whole statement. So if you were to read it, if the width is more than 600, then the width will be 600. If not, it will become a small width. So if we save this, and if we expand it to 600, it will stop expanding. And if you go smaller and smaller, it will just use this dynamic width that we have created. So once it becomes a website that people go to, it looks nicer rather than the button expanding the whole width of the app. Alright, so now we have our app over here. Let's push it to Firebase hosting. Alright, the next step is to launch our Linktree clone or Flutter Web project into the web, or we call it production. So the first thing is that in order for us to release a web, we need to use the Flutter build web command. So this will generate the app, including the assets and files inside the build web directory of your project. So let's copy this command and let's paste it over here. It will take some time for it to compile the main.dart for the web. Alright, once it has compiled for our build web project, let's go to our folder explorer tab, and if you click on this build folder, you could see there's a subfolder that's called web, and this is all the folders that's going to be pushed into the World Wide Web. The next thing is that we're going to run our Linktree clone, our Flutter Web project in release mode. So type in the command flutter run -d. The -d means device, so we will use Chrome, and then we are going to have the release mode. Press enter, and now you could see that your Flutter Web project is being run in production mode. So you could see that the support for web development is not stable yet and hasn't been thoroughly tested. So this is just an FYI. Okay, so make sure that your links are working, clicking on every link to see every link is working. Alright, that's great. So let's press Q to quit. And the hosting service that we're going to use is Firebase Hosting. So Firebase is a service that is backed by Google, and it has different services such as a database, a machine learning kit, authentication, cloud functions, and in this tutorial, we are going to use their hosting services. So if you don't have a Google account, please create, and then you will see this Go to Console button. Click on it. So inside your Firebase projects, if you have some Firebase projects that you have done, it will look something like this. If not, then there will be like an Add Project kind of button. So let's click it. And why not I like this animation. So yes, a Firebase project is like a container. So let's type in our name, our project name. We can call it Linktree-clone. Let's press continue. I will not enable Google Analytics. So let's create the project and let's wait, just like this guy over here. So once your project is ready, click on continue. And this will launch you into the project overview of your first Firebase project or your many Firebase project. The next thing that you need to do is to go to the hosting tab on the left, and we are going to start hosting our web app. So let's get started. And now install Firebase CLI. CLI means command line tool, meaning like, you know, where Flutter has its own command line tool. Once we have written down the word Flutter in our terminal, it gives us a plethora of different commands. So that's what a command line is. So you need to have npm in order to install Firebase tools. So what's npm? So npm is, in short, a node package manager. This thing, node package manager. What's a node package manager? Think of it as a library of third-party services that you can use. So in coding, we don't have services, but we have packages that we can use. For example, Firebase. And if you don't know what is Node, so Node is an open source, cross-platform JavaScript runtime environment that executes JavaScript code outside of a web browser, meaning backend framework. So you will have Node.js over here. So you need to download. I will recommend for most users to download this version and just download the PKG, press install. So you don't have to mess around with the different steps. So for Windows user, I'm sorry, I don't have any Windows machine to demo you, but it's okay. So you just install. So once you install your Node.js, type in this thing node-v and this thing will pop up. So once you install Node.js, npm or Node Package Manager will also be installed as well. So to check whether you have npm, type in npm-v and you see the version number of npm. Alright, so once we are settled with Node.js and npm, we can now install our Firebase tools. So you just copy and you can paste it. So once you have downloaded Firebase tools through npm, the next thing, sign in to Google using this Firebase command called Firebase login. So press enter. And would you allow Firebase to collect some command line usage? For me, I would say yes. Let's contribute. And this authentication window will pop up in your web browser. Use the account that's used for your Linktree clone project. So I'm using this one. Firebase wants access to your Google account. Let's allow it. And it is successful. And as you can see here, you are logged in. Alright, the next thing is that we are going to initiate your project. So let's run this command inside your app's root directory, meaning your Linktree clones terminal. So make sure that your terminal has the word Linktree clone or the project that you have named inside your VS Code. So I personally use terminal inside my VS Code so that once it opens, for example, if I were to add a new terminal, it will open up my terminal inside the Linktree clone directory. So paste the Firebase init inside it, and now you could see that you are initializing a Firebase project. I like the artwork. Next is we are going to choose the service that we are installing inside our Flutter Web project. So for you to select, you need to press space. So let's press space for hosting. We are just using hosting. Press enter. The next thing is that it will say, please select an option. We have already created an existing project. If you want, you can actually create a new project without going to the Firebase project website. So let's use an existing project. And we have created a Linktree clone project over here. So let's choose that. And what do you want to use as your public directory? So earlier I said that the directory that we are using for pushing our Flutter Web project is over here, our build web folder. So we are going to use the build web folder. So type in build /web. So this is where our public directory is going to be pushed. Next, configure as a single page app. Rewrite all URLs to the index.html. What it means that our initial HTML file that's going to be rendered in our web page will be index.html, which it is because it contains our main.dart.js file. So this is just a compiled main.dart file into a JavaScript file. So let's do that. Let's type in yes, press Y. So build web index.html file already exists. Overwrite it? No, because we already have the index.html file that we want to showcase. So we don't need to overwrite with the Firebase default index.html file. And there, we are done it. We have already created our configuration information, project information inside our directory. So if you were to go to our Explorer tab, you can see our firebase.json has been created for us. At the same time, there's the Firebase RC file, which is over here. There it says that our default project name is the Linktree clone name that we have gotten. Alright, the next thing is we are going to deploy to Firebase hosting. So is this command that we need. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here. And there we have it. Our Flutter Web project has been pushed to the World Wide Web using Firebase hosting. So in order for us to go to the website, we can just click on this. So you can command click and open it. Let's see if it works. Alright, it does. So you can try clicking on your YouTube and it works. And then if you were to just click on continue to console, it actually refreshes and you can see that our Linktree clone Flutter Web project has been pushed. And you can see under the release history that you have pushed at this specific timing in this specific user. So what you can do with this web project is to go to your Instagram account, follow me at the Happy Harris, and then you can edit your profile and then you can just insert this link onto your website text field inside your Instagram profile and then press submit. Profile has been saved. So one thing I want to share with you is also PWA functionality of the Flutter Web that you have pushed. So what is PWA? Think of it as an app that you can download from the web browser that you have on your phone or even your web browser on your desktop. So you just copy and paste into your phone and then press enter. You could see that it has loaded the Flutter Web project that you have pushed. Then the next thing is inside for iOS simulator or in your iOS phone, you can actually put it as an app inside your phone. So how do you do that? Click on the share button and then just drag all the way up till you see add to home screen, and this is where you're able to name your Flutter Web project. Let's type in Happy Harris and let's add it. Now you can see that there's an app icon over here. The default icon is the Flutter logo. Click on it and it just opens up a web browser, but you can definitely configure this to look like an app. Now let's move on to the Android phone version. Alright, so for an Android device, what you can do is to go to your Chrome inside your Android device, paste your website, and let's press enter. And you could see that add Linktree clone to home screen. That's where this is shown for your PWA. So if you click this and you can add this, so adding Linktree clone. So now it says add home screen, and now you could see this, which is a default Flutter logo for any Flutter project. So let's add automatically. And if you were to go to the home screen, you could see that the Linktree clone PWA has been downloaded. If you click on it, it acts like an actual app. And there you have it. And that's your first Flutter Web project pushed using Firebase hosting and at the same time with some PWA functionalities.
Alright, congratulations on finishing this Flutter Web tutorial. I hope you enjoyed or learned something along the way. If you have any feedback or comments, leave it in the comment section down below. And you can go to my YouTube channel, The Happy Harris, and check out my videos over there. Stay safe in this time. All the best to you guys and have a nice day. Bye bye.